Welcome back to the Jon Krawczynski Show. Before we get this show started, one of our most popular shows at TalkNorth.com, I want to recommend that you go back and check out the Talk North Sports Report. We did it live at Parlay Kitchen and Bar, downtown Minneapolis last week. It was just a great conversation. Rebecca Brunson hustled in from the airport to join us. Steve Janaszek from the 1980 Olympic hockey team was there to sign autographs. He joined us for a while. We had Jon Krawczynski, Lavelle Emile III, and Mark Rosen emceeing. It was a great show. I highly recommend checking it out. We hit pretty much everything in Minnesota sports. This, of course, is our basketball show at the network. John works for The Athletic and TalkNorth.com. I'm Jim Suhan from the Star Tribune and TalkNorth.com. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studio.
Scott for Aquarius. Summer's all about fun, not flickering lights and faulty plumbing. From fixing that runaway toilet and not so hot water heater to installing generators for whole home backup power, Aquarius has your back. Right now, get $98 off any electrical or plumbing repair. Fast, friendly, and ready to rescue your summer from household chaos. Aquarius. Local, trusted, family-owned, and earning the right to be recommended. Schedule today at AquariusHomeservices.com.
Hey, it's Mark Rosen with a reminder to tune into my podcast, Rosen Sports Monday, every week here on Talk North Sports. We cover the gamut from the broadcasting industry to the sports personalities in town. So don't miss it. Rosen Sports Monday here on Talk North Sports.
We're also presented to you by Giggly THC Beverages and Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood. And John, let's start here. What is going on with Kevin Durant? And, as soon as I saw some of the reporting this weekend, I was thinking, number one recruit in the country out of high school. He could have played anywhere. He chose University of Texas. He's obviously comfortable playing basketball in Texas. It's a no-tax state. Is that where we're headed with all this?
I mean, it seems so right now, Jim, but I think there are some big caveats as well that we'll get into. First of all, from the broadest perspective, yes, the Wolves are interested in Kevin Durant. We reported at The Athletic in February that they had extensive conversations with the Phoenix Suns about trying to acquire him in the trade. And they absolutely, once the season was over, they did and have explored a bunch of different options trying to see if there is a deal to be done to bring Durant and put him with Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and whoever else they don't trade to make it happen. It does appear, though, as of right now, that Kevin Durant's preference is to be elsewhere. And that is a very important factor for the Timberwolves in particular. They're not a team that generally wants to bring in players who don't want to be here, especially a guy like Kevin Durant, who, I think is the kind of player that if you are acquiring him, you want to make sure he's just all in with your group. And because when he is all in, I mean, he's an incredible talent and it's a really exciting venture. If he's not all in, there are some real concerns about, how that would all play out. But, during the talks in February with the Suns, the Wolves were pretty confident that if they had pulled off a deal to get Durant, that he was comfortable playing in Minnesota. That appears to have changed, at least for right now, in terms of his preferences. It's Houston, it's San Antonio, and it's Miami. Those are the three at the top of his list. And those are no tax states. That could be a factor. There could be other things that factor into it. I can't pretend to speak for Kevin Durant and what he wants and what he's valuing. But I would say that all of that means it's unlikely that a deal would happen, but it's not impossible because we saw kind of a similar thing happen during the trade deadline last year where Jimmy Butler initially wanted the Phoenix Suns, who wanted to be traded there. That was where he wanted to go. He did not want to go to the Golden State Warriors. And eventually it became very clear that the Suns were not going to be able to pull off a trade, that the Warriors were comfortable paying him what he wanted. And so he said, okay, I will come to the Warriors, and they made that deal and it worked out. So there's still a possibility that the Rockets or the Spurs or the Heat cannot satisfy Phoenix in terms of what they want, or they just cannot get to a deal. And so that something else is going to have to happen with another team. And then maybe Durant revisits what he wants out of a team, out of, kind of the future, out of a market, out of all of those things, and it comes back around. But as of right now, the Timberwolves are nowhere close to a deal. And I think it would have to take some time and some other things to shake out and fall apart before they have a chance to get back into it.
So if Tim Connolly decided he really wanted Durant, what do you think the most he would give up would be? And who would you think would be untouchables?
Yeah, I think the most that this is an important point in the whole Durant saga that is going to play out here, because my impression, Jim, from talking not only to Wolves people, but to other people around the league about Durant's value at 37 years old, his contract situation and all of those things, in addition to his considerable basketball skill, which is still top of the line. The impression that I get is that the return for a Kevin Durant trade is going to be smaller than many people expect. Just in terms of overall value, there's not going to be, multiple first round picks, multiple young promising players and solid veterans to go through. It's just not going to be a windfall for the Suns the way that maybe you would expect when you think, oh, it's Kevin Durant. He's one of the best players of all time. And this is what it's going to take. And so the one thing that is complicating these discussions is that Durant makes $53 million, and you have to kind of get to that space that to match a deal for KD. But you also, I think that you also don't want to give up too much, if I'm trying to say. So I don't see the Wolves doing, Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, Rob Dillingham, and a pick or two. Like that's a lot to give up. And so I think that right now, what Tim Connolly would probably do is something like getting to a salary range that will allow it to be financially feasible to get done, but not including a lot of future assets. And one thing I have reported, Jaden McDaniels is not in these talks. He was not in those in the talks earlier in February about this either. But we're looking at a couple of different iterations. One maybe around Rudy Gobert, which I think the Wolves are thinking long and hard about their willingness to part with Rudy because of how important he is defensively. And so it would be, you could think of, if you're just doing the math, maybe it's Rudy Gobert, Dante DiVincenzo, and another salary to kind of try and make that work. Or maybe it's Julius Randle and DiVincenzo and another salary to make that work. And so these are the kind of mathematics that are going on in the Timberwolves' heads. And I just don't think that they are going to offer up a bloated, huge package to try and convince the Suns to do the deal with them over and try and blow another team out of the water. Because another important element of this is that as of right now, Phoenix is positioning itself to saying, look, Kevin, we respect your wishes. We understand you have certain teams you want to play for, but we're going to take the deal that's best for us. And so if another team is comfortable with acquiring you and even though you are trying to discourage them from doing it and they offer the most in return, we're going to make that happen. And so, that's where things are standing right now. But again, to kind of circle back to a point where I try to put myself in Tim Connolly's shoes here. One of the reasons that they made the trade for Rudy Gobert 3 years ago was not just that he's a great player who fit into exactly what they needed from a rebounding and defensive standpoint, a guy who they thought was going to improve their chances of going deep into the playoffs, which all has kind of come and proven to fruition. But another major factor in them being willing to pay the price that they did for him was that they had indications from Rudy Gobert that he was open to playing in Minnesota, that he looked at that and said, yes, this is a place I can live. This is an organization I can work for. I can see myself being happy and content in Minnesota over the long haul. And I think for a team like the Timberwolves, even as they have sort of graduated from the doldrums that they were in back in the day to a real viable, competitive, contending team in the Western Conference with Anthony Edwards, with Connolly and Chris Finch and all of these things to kind of tout, it's still Minnesota, and there's still perceptions about that with other players around the league that you want to make sure that the guys that you are signing or trading for or drafting are really open to being in Minnesota. And I don't know that teams in, other markets have to ask themselves that same question, but it's a real life situation here in Minnesota. And so I do think when Durant says, I'd rather be here than there, that does weigh heavily on the Timberwolves thought process in terms of how big do we want to go here and trying to make this happen.
One thing Connolly always says is you don't want to go to work with people who don't want to be at work with you, to paraphrase his philosophy. So that says, I was also, because it's Tim Connolly, I was just checking my phone to make sure he hadn't made a trade in the last 2 minutes, because that's going to happen. He's going to do something we don't expect. If we're looking at Durant, it means he's trading for somebody else, and he's going to surprise us, and nobody's going to be happy with the trade at first, and it's going to work out. That's what's going to happen this summer. I actually have some more detailed question to ask about how a deal could be structured. First, though, I want to let you know, we are sponsored by Giggly THC Beverages. We had a bunch of Gigglies at the Parlay Kitchen and Bar show last week, and pretty much everybody from our organization drinks them. Lavelle loves them. I love them. I just find that, if it's not a night, if it's a night where I know I have to be up early the next day, or I have a busy schedule the next day, or I just want to be sharp early in the morning the next day, I have a Giggly instead of having a cocktail. I still have cocktails on the weekends. I still like alcohol, but what a great alternative to have something is not going to leave you with a hangover. And I wouldn't drink it even if it was good for me if I didn't like the taste. I love the taste. The blueberry lemonade I love, raspberry ginger mule, the pineapple mojito, the blood orange margarita. They're all a little different, but they all taste really good. They taste sweet without being loaded down with sugar, because they're basically based on fruit juices. They're healthy. They taste great. Again, my wife likes the teas. We both like the seltzers, and you get different dosages of THC, whether you want to have fun or you're just looking for a bit of a relaxation. I use it more for relaxation and a sleep aid. It's great stuff. So I highly recommend Giggly THC Beverages. Remember, the promo code GigglyNorth will get you a discount on your first order. Now we want to hear more about Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood.
That's right. We're going to go to thanks to our good friend Charlie Swanson, who has jumped on board. You have seen him sitting courtside at these games over the years. He sits with Craig Hilborn, a good friend of ours as well, and has a great view of the games. And if you are in the market for a new luxury vehicle, look no further than Charlie Swanson at Lexus. Whether you're on the west side or the east side of the Twin Cities, they've got you covered with two great locations, Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Check out the all-new Lexus TX, a spacious SUV with 3 rows of seating and plenty of room for all your gear. Head over to lexusofwayzata.com or lexusofmaplewood.com for details and find your next ride today.
So help me through how to think about the potential sign and trade deals. Okay, you have Randall with a player option this summer. You have Nas with an option. How does it work? Can you just, like, if it's their option to pick up the option, do you basically have to have a conversation with them and have a deal with them where they're willing to pick up the option, and then you can trade them? How does all that work?
Yeah, so that's a great thing to get into, because that is another complicating factor of a Timberwolves involved deal with the Suns right now. As we stand today, June 16th, as we record this, the Timberwolves are a second apron team. They have their payroll from this last season is such that they are above the second apron, which brings severe restrictions on their ability to make trades. That means that for one of the elements of being a second apron team is you cannot aggregate salaries, send out 2 or 3 for one, as a second apron team. So you're saying, John, why are we wasting all this time talking about a Kevin Durant trade? Well, because there is a scenario where a deal could be agreed upon early, today, tomorrow, whenever, but not executed until July 1st. Because once July 1st comes around, the Wolves will be dipping down below the second apron, and then we'll be able to make some of these more of these kind of aggregations and trades that will have a little bit more freedom and flexibility to do it. But to make this even more complicated, one of the things that is factoring into how they negotiate and what they look at is because Naz Reid and Julius Randle both have player options for next season, it's hard to really kind of forecast what their deals are going to look like in terms of trying to package them in trades. Now, I don't believe, Jim, right now that the Wolves would want to include Naz Reid in a trade for Kevin Durant. I believe that they are hopeful that he is going to reach some sort of longer term commitment with the Timberwolves to stay in Minnesota. There is some optimism on the Wolves side. I do think Reid is going to have plenty of suitors out on the open market. But there is sort of a lack of spending power out there in the NBA to really kind of drive the price up to a point that might be, completely untouchable for the Wolves. So you have that factor, but then you have Julius Randle, who I think is still trying to weigh his options on. Does he pick up his option for $31 million next year, play that out? Does he try to get a longer term deal with the Wolves done at maybe a little bit smaller number, but has a little bit more long-term security? Or is this a case where he goes somewhere else and finds a team that he likes and will give him the longer term deal? Would Phoenix do that? Would Miami do it if you got some sort of 3-team trade going where Randle goes to Miami and Durant comes here? Randle goes to Houston and Durant comes here, something like that. I think these are all options that are being explored and thought about both by the Timberwolves, also by Julius Randle, with just remembering that Chris Finch really, really likes Julius Randle here. The Timberwolves in general love what they saw from Randle, especially down the stretch. Obviously, it didn't end well in the Western Conference Finals, but I think that there's a lot of belief in him. But that is a long-winded way of saying this is really complicated. There's just a lot of moving parts. And whenever you are trying to pull off a trade of this magnitude and there are all these moving parts like that, every single one of them sort of chips at the likelihood of a deal getting done. If there's just so many things, so many hoops to jump through, and another team is a lot cleaner with what they can offer and how they can get it done and all those things, generally speaking, it doesn't go your way. Again, it doesn't eliminate the Timberwolves from contention and from being able to do it. But I would say that all of those factors are just making this a really sort of difficult proposition to navigate and to figure out right now.
So much to get to. We're going to talk next about Tom Thibodeau, the Knicks, and Chris Finch. That weird potential, not even potential, just that weird triangle. And we'll get more into Gobert later, his value. We'll talk to Jaden. We have a lot to get to here. First, though, I want to thank Princeton's Liquors.
Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove. Bill Princeton and the Princeton family have been in the liquor selling business for decades and decades. If you want bourbon, if you want craft beer, no better selection than Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove. They have anything you could want from a wine, spirits, anything that you're looking for a party, for just hanging out on a night or a weekend, just watching the game. But if you're looking for the best selection of craft beer and bourbon, you go to Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove. They will take care of you. It is a community, family-run business. They've been in business forever and ever. We love it here at Talk North, being involved with community-oriented businesses. And so if you go to Princeton's Liquors, and maybe Bill, if you see Bill in there Ask him about being a Crunch mascot for a summer in 2000, I believe it was, way back in the day, and he'll give you some good tales about that. But if you're looking for anything that you want, especially bourbon and craft beer, go to Princeton's Liquors in Maple Grove.
Thanks to Bill and everyone. Thanks also to our longest running sponsor, TSR Injury Law. You know the deal. You see the billboards, you see the Nas Reed commercials. None of that happens if they aren't a successful business. They built themselves up by winning cases. They're still winning cases. That's more important than anything else. And they're actually a company is capable of having fun with their success. They do deal with Nas Reed. They hang out with Nas Reed. They go to the Timberwolves games. They support the Timberwolves. They support this network. Great community partners. And so all you really need to know is we don't want you to need their help, but if you need their help, if you're ever injured, call 612-TSR-TIME. They'll take good care of you. They will not charge you unless they win your case, and they win lots of cases. That's why we can talk about them in this way. So thanks to TSR Injury Law. Thanks to Steve Terry and all the partners. 612-TSR-TIME. Thanks also to Royal Credit Union.
Soak up sun, sand, and smart saving with a certificate at Royal Credit Union. Royal's 4.40% annual percentage yield 12-month certificate has guaranteed returns at maturity and no minimum opening balance for fast and easy opening. Open now at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/savesmart. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 5/27/25. Insured by NCUA.
All right, so we'll get back to Timberwolves stuff in this, but I'm just fascinated by the fact that the Knicks got rid of a coach who took them to the Western Conference Finals, 6 games into the Eastern Conference Finals, and fired the coach. And I get it. Listen, these guys paid a lot of money. If you become convinced internally that someone isn't going to win a championship for you, then it might not seem like it's fair, but this is a big business. They're going to make whatever move they think needed to make. But I am shocked that you would fire somebody of that accomplishment and not have a replacement ready and just look like you're completely rudderless.
Yeah, I think that is that's the biggest thing about this whole situation with the Knicks is that when you cut loose a coach who, let's face it, like he can be kind of a short shelf life type of a coach. The way that he pushes guys, the way that he grinds guys sometimes, it can be a lot to deal with, but he won a ton of games in New York. He did a great job from a coaching perspective with the Knicks to get him to the Eastern Conference Finals. And, the message that you send when you make a move like this, after making the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in 25 years, and they said it in their team statement, we are chasing a championship. That's what it is. So, when you cut loose the coach and then you open up a search, there is an expectation that whoever you hire is going to get the team to that next level. And so you have set the bar essentially for another coach at championship or bust, at least finals or bust. And that's a high bar to clear. And so, you would think that if that is the case, that this is what you believe is going to happen, that there would be someone that you have targeted, ready to go. Yes, this is the guy that we need. I mean, we think back to the Pistons, firing Rick Carlisle, going to Larry Brown. Like that's what this team needed, and they got over the hump and got to a championship. And it was only a short time of a relationship, but it worked out. And so the way that the Knicks have gone about this with asking permission for 7 different coaches that are acting head coaches, including Chris Finch, and then starting this wide search, it says that they didn't have a real plan for what exactly was the type of coach that we want. And that is a little scary because certainly Tibbs has his critics, and we saw some of that here in Minnesota as well, but he won at an incredibly high level with New York. And he has Jalen Brunson, the star there, in his corner. And so, This is a gamble and a risk, and maybe it's still entirely possible that they find someone that does it, but it doesn't feel like they have gone into this process with a clear plan of we are going to get coach X or coach Y or coach Z. It's like, we're just going to look at whoever wants to be here, figure it out, who we can get, and then go from there. And I don't know that that's a great process. And when you're looking at trying to get the last piece of what they believe is a championship puzzle.
And one thing we haven't talked about is the fact that Chris Finch was on the list of Knicks' potential candidates. I'm guessing that just went nowhere, and that was Knicks' interest, not any interest on the Timberwolves side in letting Finch ever talk to them.
Yeah, I think when you look at there's plenty of good reason for the Knicks to be interested in Chris Finch. Gerson Rosas, first of all, is in that front office. He hired Chris Finch with the Timberwolves, and Finch has won a lot here with the Timberwolves. Turned a team that was struggling into a conference finalist 2 years in a row. And so there is a lot of, reason for the Knicks to be excited about it. There's also a lot of reason for the Wolves to want to keep him. And so I believe that in terms of the Wolves' decision not to grant, permission for the Knicks to talk with Chris Finch, one is, first and foremost, is that the Wolves really like Chris Finch. They extended him last year. They believe that he's the right person for this job, and they want to keep him on a team that is going to enter next season with, again, big time aspirations. But number two is, I don't think that Chris Finch was interested in the New York Knicks as well. I think if Finch would have went to Tim Connolly, went to ownership and said, hey guys, like, this is a great opportunity. It's the New York Knicks. I'm from Philadelphia. It's for East Coast kind of thing. I'd like to explore this at least. I think there's a chance that the Timberwolves would have said, well, all right, we don't want you to do this, but if that's what you want to do, maybe we will consider it. But I do not believe that Chris Finch was interested in taking that job, because it's a high pressure job, with an owner who is very enigmatic, in an organization that is showing to have some culture issues. And then to go in there and be like, well, I've got to take this team to the finals or else I'm going to be blamed for not making it. I think those are all factors, not only, for Chris Finch, but for maybe other, coaches that were kind of being explored, whether Billy Donovan or Jason Kidd or Quinn Snyder, like a lot of the other ones that they asked permission for. I think it could be a deterrent. I think you see some of the reporting, and maybe there's still a chance at Jason Kidd or something like that. But I don't think that there is any chance for Chris Finch with the New York Knicks. And I think there were multiple fronts on why there's going to be nothing that comes out of that.
Yeah. I just think the ego you'd have to think you can do better than Tibbs at this point is remarkable. And the ego you'd have to say, oh yeah, I'll go in there and do better. I'll just go win an NBA title my first year there. I mean, that's basically what they're asking the next coach to do. I guess the nice way to put it is you'd have to have great belief in yourself.
Yeah, you would. And there's plenty of ego in these coaches for sure. And, there's always someone that says I can do better. No question about it. But you look at all of those factors. It's ownership, but it's also roster. I mean, it's a roster that has a very, very good starting five. After that, it gets really thin really quickly. And so, how do they kind of continue to build that roster to make it more championship viable? Because the other thing that, if I'm a coach looking at it, it's not like the Knicks got upset in the Eastern Conference Finals. The Indiana Pacers are just a really, really good team. And so I don't think they underachieved. I don't think that team underachieved at all. And so, there are certainly situations that you can look at and say, this team fell short here. I know exactly how I can make them better. And, I think it's harder to identify those elements with the Knicks, who lost to a great Indiana Pacers team in the Eastern Conference Finals, and say, yep, if I do this or this differently, then things are going to click in, and it's going to be it's going to be into the championship. Now you're in the East, which that certainly does help things, but I don't think it's as simple as Steve Kerr taking over for Mark Jackson and saying, hey, look, we just got to breathe some movement into this offense and we're going to be a juggernaut. Like, I think that there's more work to do with the roster than there is with what they did from a schematic standpoint. And that's got to be something that makes you a little bit nervous going into that.
Next question. What is Rudy Gobert's value? How is he valued here? How is he valued in the open market? But first, John, tell us about your experience with True Vision Institute.
Yeah, True Vision Institute in Bloomington. If you are watching this on YouTube, we're using the video portion of this podcast, and so now you can see that I don't have any glasses anymore. It's been a life-changing experience for me. There's no question about it. I can't wait this summer to be going up to the lake with the family and be able to. One of the things I really like to do when we're out at my brother-in-law's cabin is just go for a run in the July heat and then just jump right in the lake and cool off that way. And when I'm doing it now, I do not have to worry about glasses. I do not have to worry about contacts getting in the way. I'm just diving in to the lake and going for a nice little swim to cool off. And that's thanks to the good folks at True Vision. And when I say good folks, they're the best of folks. You go into True Vision in Bloomington and they just kind of wrap you in a warm blanket and just like, hey, we will take care of you here. We will get you to the spot where you need to be from a vision correction situation. And Dr. Chu comes in and takes care of you at, above and beyond anything that I could have ever asked for. So go to truevision.com, set up your consultation, tell them the Jon Krawczynski Show sent you, and get on with living your life. Jump into the lake this summer with no worries about glasses or contacts or any of that stuff. You can't beat it in Minnesota this time of year. And so take advantage of that. Truevision.com, True Vision in Bloomington.
And finally, the company that usually sponsors our Twitter questions on this show, you see John wearing this stuff all the time, especially when you go to practices, Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line.
Lamb Chops clothing, it's so great. Go to sglambchops.com, put in the promo code JONK20 for 20% off anything that they have there. They have hoodies, they have hats, they have t-shirts, they have shorts, they have sweaters, they have all sorts of different casual wear and streetwear, super high quality, very stylish. I'm actually talking with Jordan right now about a possible meetup in Las Vegas for Summer League with Timberwolves fans. And so we're going to see if we can pull that off the first weekend of Summer League. But this is a company that loves to be embedded in the community, loves to do things and interact face to face with, Wolves fans, Lynx fans, just all sorts of people who are out and about. And I've said it before, but you go to sglambchops.com, you put in the promo code JONK20, you get the 20% off, and you're going to get clothes that are going to last you a long time, that are super comfortable, that are stylish enough to wear out in the North Loop on a Friday night, or comfortable enough to wear while you're lounging around the house, watching games and just chilling. And so it's got the best of both worlds. Go to sglambchops.com, promo code JONK20 for 20% off anything at Lamb Chops clothing.
So what do you think Rudy Gobert's perceived value is around the league, and how do you think the Timberwolves are currently valuing him?
Yeah, I think that he's kind of at a crossroads, it feels like, in his career, because 2 years ago he was the defense player of the year, had an unbelievable season. Last year, I think by his account, by the Timberwolves account, it wasn't as consistently good as he was 2 years ago. And, there's a lot of, there's a lot of reasons for that, including the trade and bringing in new people that he has to learn and play with. But, also I just didn't see quite the same defensive dominance that we did, see the year before. And, I do believe that the Timberwolves look at Rudy Gobert and say, if we do not have him on the team, our defense completely falls apart. And I just think the rim protection is still incredibly valuable. His ability to grab rebounds, to deter rim drives is real. We even saw it in the Thunder series. When he was on the floor, the Thunder had a much harder time scoring than when he was off. And so there is a reluctance, I think, on the Timberwolves' part to make a trade without some sort of like contingency plan for a big man, to eat the glass and to protect the rim. And so that's why, you're hearing his name come up in talks about with Kevin Durant. And I do believe that the Suns have some level of interest in bringing Rudy Gobert in, because the Suns do not want to rebuild here. They do not want to trade Kevin Durant and just tear things down and start over. And so one of the ways for them to be very competitive, especially in the regular season, is to bring a trade in that brings Rudy Gobert, because you can look at, his clumsiness on offense. You can look at his lack of shooting and those types of things and fixate on them. But what he does do is he makes the playoffs every single year he's in his career. Like, he's just a floor raising type of a player. And the Suns do not have anyone like that in the front court, next to Devin Booker. So if I'm the Suns and I'm really valuing having a chance to make it back to the playoffs next season, Rudy Gobert is a player that I really look at. Now, I don't know that there's a ton of teams out there that really value Gobert and say, yes, I would, I'm going to offer this to bring him in. But in the Suns' individual situation, I do believe that Gobert has value for them. And I also believe that, and I don't think this is sort of, the Timberwolves negotiating in the media or anything like that. I just think that they really do understand that if they were to lose Rudy, it would be a big blow to them and to their defensive identity. And so I don't think that they are enamored with making a trade with Rudy involved. Does it mean they won't do it? I can't say that, but, Rudy is getting to the point in his career now where he is 31, 32, and you wonder how many years he has left before he really sort of kind of falls. And so that's the other thing that the Wolves have to factor in here as they consider things is, how much of his prime or the end of his prime is left for Rudy Gobert, and would it be better to move him now? Or just kind of hold on to him and see what you can win here over the next 2 years with him as your defensive fulcrum.
Fascinating stuff. That's going to be one of the most fascinating decisions they make. Bringing him back is even a fascinating decision, and just trying to go forward because, you're right. I think you said it exactly the right way. I think Anthony Edwards sets the ceiling for this franchise. I think Rudy Gobert sets the floor. If Rudy's on the floor, they're going to be competitive. They're going to win. They're going to beat bad teams. They're going to be a good defensive team. Take him away. They could be good defensively, but it's going to be a lot harder work.
Yeah, exactly right. I think, Rudy Gobert is one of those players that you do not really fully appreciate. I was in this camp while he was in Utah. I did not see the fuss about him. And I heard, people in Utah talk about, yeah, but you got to see the way that he handles the little things and all the stuff that he does defensively. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's great. But come on, like, we just look at how he catches the ball. Look at his shot profile. Like, how does that help you win at a high level? And then when he gets here, and he is in there every day, and he's practicing and he's working out and he's in these games, you really do gain an appreciation for what he brings from a consistency standpoint, just from a small thing, screen setting and rim deterrence standpoint, that you're just not going to appreciate if you don't watch him night in and night out. And I think that the Wolves are the same way in terms of, there are fewer, there's no one that's more of a staunch defender of Rudy Gobert in, the greater kind of criticism of him around the league than people with the Wolves who are in the trenches with him. Like, they just understand that, and they see what happens when he is off the floor. And so, it might be easy for a lot of us to look at and say, yeah, of course, send Rudy Gobert out. Who cares? Like, he can't make a shot outside of 1 foot, and he can't do this and he can't do that. Of course you send him out in Kevin Durant trade. No question about it. But I do think that it is a much more difficult thing for the Timberwolves to actually come to grips with than it is for the lay NBA fan to look at and say, yeah, no hesitation whatsoever. There is real hesitation, in the Timberwolves camp about making a trade that includes Rudy as the centerpiece of a deal.
Well said. All right, let's get to the Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line Twitter question of the week.
Yeah, it is right here. It's from Eric Burtness. How big of a priority is it to the Wolves to upgrade at point guard or a capable ball handler to keep those miles off Edwards in the playoffs? Mike, Dante, Randall, etc. really struggled to bring the ball up the court in the Western Conference Finals, and that forced the ball into Ant's hands more and more. And yes, Eric, I think it is a priority to look at that position, or at least, and it's not necessarily just point guard, but yes, having more ball handling, more ability to break kind of token pressure in the backcourt and get into the offense quicker and not have that just be Ant's main responsibility, because that is a physically taxing role for Ant to play. And especially when you're asking him to be a super high level defender and a shot creator and all of these other things. And so, there are several ways that they can go about this. Number one is you can stay the course with Mike Conley, who you hope that comes into camp a little healthier next year and is ready to go right away. But I think that a priority will be, if they do not make a move, of getting Rob Dillingham to a point where he is just a part of the rotation. And you may go through some growing pains with him. You may kind of experience some ups and downs as he learns it and as he gets his feet wet and figures all of that out. But the importance of establishing another player who can handle it and can get into the paint and can do all the things that you need to do is just paramount. And so one thing that we know that Rob does really well is he does handle the ball. He does, he has a really slick handle. He's very quick. And so he can take on that immediate role. And then you hope that the shot improves. You hope that kind of the understanding of running an offense improves, and he becomes a real weapon that way. So you look at that first and foremost. I think that's the most likely scenario, because pulling off trades is difficult, but they will also, I think if the Durant trade does not happen, which it doesn't appear that it's going to happen right now, then I do see they could look at another option in the trade market. Darius Garland's name has come up. I think they would have to pay a lot more for Garland than they would for Durant. So again, I think that's an unlikely situation, but Tim Conway has been ultra aggressive in these things. And so I would expect that he's going to do something like, he would look at something like that. Also on the smaller potatoes side of things, I mean, Tyus Jones played for the minimum last year. He had a rough year. He'll probably have to play for the minimum again this year. That's another Mike Conley facsimile that would make a lot of sense to me. If you need a bridge guard while Dillingham is learning, assuming that Nickeil Alexander-Walker goes, somewhere else, you'd certainly have some defensive issues. But, in terms of a guy who can run the offense, can handle the ball and can distribute and do those things, I think Tyus Jones is a nice option. And I'm sure there are several other options that Tim Connolly is looking at in the trade, in the free agency market, to add another guard that can handle, it's really probably the Wolves' biggest area of need right now. And so they will be looking hard at all of their options to beef up that side of thing, especially considering we expect not Nickeil Alexander-Walker to move on somewhere else.
This is our primary basketball show at TalkNorth.com. We have 3 Viking shows: Alec Lewis's show, the Viking Update Show, and Jeff Diamond's Vikings NFL Insider. We have Russo and LaPanta on hockey, Kevin Gorg on hockey, Bardon Beauty's on hockey, Royce Molly, Lavelle Neal, myself on baseball. Don Mitchell's show, we interview Leo Lewis this week, my old friend who played for the Vikings and worked for the Vikings for a long time. We just have a massive amount I can't even remember all the shows we have. We have lots of sports shows. We have outdoor content that's really good. Check it out at TalkNorth.com. When you find a show you like, please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. It's free. It's the easiest way to listen. For today, Thanks to Jon Krawczynski. Thanks to all of our producers at TalkNorth.com. And let's talk more about Mike Conley's role next week.